On our anniversary night, my father-in-law kept insulting me, but when I spoke back, my husband slapped me in front of 500 guests. Everyone laughed. I wiped my tears and made one call. "Dad, please come." My name is Vanessa, and I am 33 years old. For 7 years, I let my husband and his wealthy family treat me like a charity case because they thought I was a penniless orphan. What they did not know was who my real father was and how quickly he could destroy their entire empire. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to stand up to toxic in-laws who underestimated your worth. The Belmont Real Estate Group was celebrating its 10th anniversary with a massive charity gala at a luxury hotel in downtown Chicago. I had actually designed and organized the entire event through my boutique crisis management and event planning firm. It took me months of late nights to ensure every crystal chandelier sparkled perfectly and every white rose centerpiece was flawless. But to my husband Bradley and his parents, my career was just a joke. Bradley was 35, a junior vice president at his father's company, riding entirely on nepotism and a trust fund. I met him when I was 26, working under my mother's maiden name, Lane. I had estranged myself from my own family to prove I could build a life from the ground up without relying on inherited power. Bradley thought he was my savior. His mother, Patricia, constantly reminded me how lucky I was that Bradley picked me out of obscurity. She would loudly tell her country club friends that I came to them with nothing but a cheap maiden name and a degree from a state school. I swallowed the insults for years because I loved Bradley, or at least I loved the man I thought he was when it was just the two of us. But tonight, the true nature of the Belmont family was going to be put on public display. The grand ballroom was packed with 500 of the city's most elite investors, politicians, and socialites. The clinking of crystal champagne flutes echoed through the massive room as my father-in-law Gregory stepped up to the main stage. At 62 years old, Gregory Belmont loved nothing more than an audience. He adjusted his expensive tuxedo jacket and tapped the microphone. The room quieted down immediately. I stood near the front table, holding my clutch, smiling as a supportive daughter-in-law should. I expected a toast about the company's decade of success. Instead, Gregory looked directly down at me, a cruel smirk spreading across his face. 10 years of the Belmont Group, Gregory announced, his voice booming through the speakers. We have built skyscrapers, secured massive developments, and lifted up the less fortunate. Speaking of charity, I want to take a moment to acknowledge my son Bradley. Bradley has such a huge heart. Why, just look at his wife Vanessa. He pointed right at me. A few people chuckled, sensing the shift in tone. When Bradley found Vanessa, she was just a struggling girl with a cute little crisis management hobby. Gregory continued, his tone dripping with condescension. No family to speak of, no connections, just a nobody orphan trying to play business in the big city. But Bradley, being the generous Belmont that he is, rescued her from the bargain bin of life. He gave her our prestigious name, put a roof over her head, and let her pretend she is one of us. The ballroom erupted in sycophantic laughter. 500 wealthy guests threw their heads back, chuckling at my expense. I felt the heat rising in my cheeks. I looked over at Bradley, expecting him to step forward to defend me, to tell his father that was enough. But Bradley was laughing too. He raised his glass to his father, completely complicit in my public humiliation. Patricia leaned over from the adjacent table, her voice carrying over the laughter. "It is true, dear. You really should be more grateful we let you wear that dress tonight." The old Vanessa, the girl who desperately wanted to fit in and keep the peace, would have run to the bathroom and cried. She would have stayed silent and endured the pain. But something inside me snapped. 7 years of biting my tongue. 7 years of hiding my true identity just to be treated like dirt by a family of arrogant frauds. I was done. I did not shrink away. I did not cry. I calmly walked over to a stunned waiter who was holding a backup microphone for the event announcements. I took it from his hand, my grip tight and steady. I turned on the microphone, and a sharp feedback sound cut through the laughter, silencing the room instantly. "Thank you for that heartwarming toast, Gregory," I said, my voice perfectly level and echoing across the ballroom. It is fascinating to hear you talk about charity and rescuing people, especially considering the current state of the Belmont Group. Since we are sharing fun facts tonight, let us talk about the numbers you forgot to mention in your quarterly report. Gregory's smirk vanished. His face turned pale as he realized what I was doing. I had done crisis management for corporate firms. I knew exactly how to read a financial ledger, and living in that house, I had seen the mail they tried to hide. I might just have a cute little hobby. I continued pacing slowly at the front of the stage. But even I know that your latest quarterly earnings are down 40%. I also know that you are currently drowning in toxic debt from that failed waterfront development you tried to cover up. The Belmont Group is not lifting up the less fortunate. You are bleeding your investors dry to pay off loans you defaulted on 3 months ago. The only charity case in this room is the Belmont Real Estate Group. The ballroom went dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. Then the whispers started. Investors turned to each other, their faces filled with panic and outrage. The facade of their immense wealth was completely shattered. I had hit them where it actually hurt. Their wallets and their public image. "Shut your mouth!" Bradley screamed, storming across the stage and leaping down to where I stood. His face was contorted with pure rage. He was terrified of losing the investors who were now openly murmuring about pulling their funds. Instead of acting like a husband, he acted like a cornered animal. He grabbed my arm, his grip bruising my skin. "Let go of me," I demanded, trying to pull away. But Bradley did not let go. He raised his other hand and slapped me hard across the face. The crack of his palm against my cheek echoed loudly through the microphone I was still holding. The force of the blow knocked me off balance, and I stumbled backward, my ear ringing. The entire ballroom gasped in collective shock. "Learn your place, you ungrateful leech!" Bradley hissed, standing over me with his fists clenched. "You come into my world with nothing, and you dare to disrespect my father. You are nothing without me." I touched my lip, feeling the warm sting of blood. I looked up at the man I had loved for 7 years, and I felt absolutely nothing but cold, hard clarity. The illusion of my marriage was dead. Gregory signaled frantically to the venue staff. "Security, get this crazy woman out of here right now." 2 large security guards approached me. These were men I had hired for the event, men I had personally vetted. They looked apologetic, but Gregory was the one signing the venue check. They gently but firmly grabbed my arms and escorted me toward the exit. Patricia laughed as I was dragged past her table. "Do not bother coming back to our house," she spat. "You are done playing dress-up, you little nobody." The heavy glass doors of the hotel closed behind me, shutting away the warmth and the noise of the gala. I stood alone on the cold concrete curb in the damp night air. My custom designer gown was slightly torn at the hem from the scuffle, and I could taste the metallic tang of blood on my split lip. A few valet drivers stared at me, unsure of what to do. I did not need their help. I reached into my clutch and pulled out my phone. For 7 years, I had kept a wall between my past and my present. I wanted to be independent. I wanted to prove I did not need my family's immense power to survive in this world. But standing there humiliated and physically assaulted by a man who thought I was powerless, I realized independence was highly overrated when you were dealing with monsters. I scrolled to the very bottom of my contacts list. I found the number I had not called since I was 26 years old. My thumb hovered over the screen for only a second before I pressed call. It rang twice. Then a deep, powerful voice answered, a voice that commanded boardrooms and terrified global markets. "Vanessa," he asked, sounding surprised, but instantly alert. "Dad," I whispered, my voice turning to steel. All the pain and humiliation washed away, replaced by a burning desire for absolute justice. "You were right about them. You were right about all of it. I am ready to come home." There was a brief silence on the line. He did not ask what happened. He did not need to. The tone of my voice was enough. Jonathan Croft, the billionaire CEO of Croft Financial and the most feared private equity titan in America, took a slow breath. "I will send the car," my father replied, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous rumble. "And I will buy their entire existence by morning." The morning sun offers absolutely no warmth as my rideshare pulls into the long, circular driveway of the Belmont estate. The massive brick facade of the suburban mansion stands exactly as it did yesterday, but the feeling of home has completely vanished. My cheek still throbs violently from where Bradley struck me at the gala. The skin is tight and painfully bruised, a constant physical reminder of the grand illusion I have lived in for the past 7 years. I thank the driver, step out onto the pristine paving stones, and walk up the sweeping front steps. I am exhausted, running on zero sleep and pure adrenaline, but my mind has never been clearer. I am eager to pack my personal belongings, gather my business files, and leave this incredibly toxic environment forever. I reach into my purse and pull out my key, sliding it into the heavy brass lock of the custom mahogany door. It does not turn. I jiggle it, assuming the delicate mechanism is simply stuck the way it gets when the weather changes. I push my weight against the wood and try again, but the metal refuses to budge. A cold, stark realization washes over me, sending a shiver straight down my spine. The locks have been changed. Less than 12 hours after my husband physically assaulted me in front of 500 influential guests, he has locked me out of the house I helped renovate, the home I poured my heart into designing. I knock on the heavy wood, the sound echoing hollowly across the quiet suburban street. I wait, listening to the silence of the morning. I knock again, much harder this time, letting my anger fuel the pounding of my fist. Moments later, I hear the deadbolt slide back with a heavy metallic clack. The door opens just a crack, stopped abruptly by the thick brass security chain. My mother-in-law, Patricia, peers out at me through the narrow gap. She is fully dressed for the day, in a pristine cashmere sweater set, her hair perfectly coiffed, her makeup impeccably applied. Her expression is twisted into a deeply cruel sneer. She looks directly at the dark, swollen bruise on my face and does not show even a fraction of an ounce of sympathy. Instead, her eyes dart up and down, taking in the simple clothes I borrowed from a friend last night, looking at me as if I am a stray dog begging for scraps at her back door. "What do you want, Vanessa?" Patricia asks, her voice dripping with absolute venom. "I am here to pack my things," I say, keeping my tone perfectly level and refusing to let her see how much my face hurts when I speak. "Open the door, Patricia. I need my clothes, my laptop, and my business documents. Then you will never have to see me again." Patricia laughs, a sharp, grating sound that sets my teeth on edge. "You have no things here. Everything in this house was bought with Belmont money. We took you in when you were renting a moldy studio apartment over a loud laundromat. You were an absolute nobody. A penniless girl with a cheap degree and a pathetic sob story about having no family to fall back on. We gave you a beautiful life, we gave you a respectable name, and this is how you repay us. By trying to ruin my husband's business in front of our most important investors." I stare at her through the crack in the door, genuinely amazed by her absolute delusion. I had let them believe that fabricated backstory for 7 long years. I hid my real identity, dropping my famous last name and using my mother's maiden name to prove I could succeed on my own merit without my father's billions backing me up. They loved playing the role of my wealthy saviors. They loved holding their country club status over my head, treating me like a charity project they could mold into a quiet, obedient wife. I built my crisis management agency from the ground up, I remind her, refusing to break eye contact or lower my gaze. I paid for half the custom furniture in that house. I contributed to the mortgage every single month from my own business accounts. I earned everything I have. Patricia snorts dismissively and reaches her arm out of the crack in the door. She tosses a thick stack of heavy legal papers onto the porch. They land right at my feet with a loud thud, the crisp white pages fluttering slightly in the morning breeze. "You can take those instead," she says, her voice laced with triumph. "It is a highly aggressive post-nuptial agreement, though. Bradley is treating it as your final divorce settlement. Our corporate lawyers worked on it all night long. You are going to sign it today, and you are going to walk away quietly with a $20,000 payout. If you do not sign it exactly as it is written, Bradley will tie your pathetic little agency up in court until you completely starve." I look down at the papers resting on the welcome mat. $20,000. It is a calculated, deliberate insult. They want to crush my spirit to remind me of my supposed place at the absolute bottom of their food chain. They think I am terrified of losing their financial safety net. They think I am the same isolated, vulnerable girl they met all those years ago. He will claim your business was funded entirely by our marital assets. Patricia continues, clearly enjoying the sound of her own voice and the power she thinks she holds over me. We have the best and most ruthless lawyers in the city, Vanessa. We will bankrupt you, drag your name through the mud in the press, and leave you with less than nothing. Bradley is entirely done with your charity case behavior. He needs a woman who understands how to support a successful man, not a hysterical little girl who throws ungrateful tantrums at charity events. I stand perfectly still, letting her threats wash over me. A normal woman in my position might fall to her knees and cry. A normal woman might beg for access to her clothes or panic at the threat of a massive legal battle against a real estate tycoon. But I am not a normal woman. I am the sole heir to Jonathan Croft, the most powerful man in the financial sector. Patricia has no idea that the man she is threatening to unleash her lawyers upon is a man my father could buy and sell before his morning coffee. My father's words from last night echo in my mind. I will buy their entire existence by morning. I know that right now, teams of elite financial analysts are dissecting every single vulnerability the Belmont Group possesses. I open my mouth to tell Patricia exactly where she can shove her pathetic settlement papers, but before I can speak, the heavy wooden front door suddenly swings open wider. The brass security chain slips free from its track, rattling against the frame. Standing right behind Patricia in the grand foyer is Ashley. She is Bradley's 24-year-old executive assistant, but she is not wearing her usual tailored office attire or carrying a clipboard. She is wearing my custom silk robe, the very specific, incredibly expensive robe I bought for myself during my anniversary trip to Paris. And in her manicured hands, she is casually sipping hot coffee from my favorite handmade ceramic mug. The mug I drink from every single morning while reading the news. Ashley leans against the doorframe, looking me up and down. She takes a slow sip of her coffee, her eyes lingering on the dark bruise blooming across my cheek. She offers me a sickly, sweet, victorious smile, completely devoid of any guilt or shame. Good morning, Vanessa. Ashley says, her voice dripping with fake innocence. Bradley said you might stop by to cause more trouble. He asked me to make sure you do not try to steal any of my things on your way out. I look at the young woman wearing my clothes standing in my hallway, drinking from my cup. I look at Patricia, who is standing beside her with a look of absolute approval, entirely complicit in her son's infidelity. The sheer audacity of the assistant being there the very next morning, flaunting her position in my home, makes my blood run freezing cold. The last remaining shred of mercy I held for the Belmont family completely evaporates. I do not feel sad. I do not feel broken. I feel a terrifying, glorious sense of absolute freedom. They have handed me the match, and I am going to burn their entire empire to the ground. Bradley steps into the morning light of the grand foyer, his heavy leather loafers clicking loudly against the imported marble floor. He looks perfectly rested, wearing a crisp designer polo and casual slacks, as if he did not just publicly assault his wife 12 hours ago. He walks up behind Ashley and casually slips his arm around her waist, pulling her flush against his chest. His hand rests possessively on the silk of my Paris robe. He does not look ashamed. He does not look guilty. He looks entirely arrogant, staring down at me with the same sneer his mother wears. I see my mother already gave you the severance package, Bradley says, his voice dripping with absolute boredom. Do not act so shocked, Vanessa. Ashley and I have been together for 12 months. A whole year of me finally having a woman who understands her place. Ashley leans back against him, tracing her manicured fingernail along his jawline. She offers me a look of pure, unadulterated pity. Bradley needs a real partner, she says, her voice coated in a sickly sweet tone. He needs someone who actually knows how to support a successful man. You were always too busy playing pretend with your little event planning company. Ashley knows how to treat a Belmont. Patricia nods in agreement from the doorway, her arms crossed over her chest. She is clearly thrilled that her son has replaced me with someone young, pliable, and easily controlled. They all stand there, a united front of profound entitlement, waiting for me to break down. They are waiting for the tears, the screaming, the desperate begging of a woman who has just lost her entire world. I stand on the porch and feel a terrifying, glorious sense of absolute freedom wash over my entire body. I do not feel sad. I do not feel broken. I look at Bradley, a man I thought was powerful, and suddenly I just see a weak, pathetic boy hiding behind his father's failing bank accounts. I look at the legal papers scattered across the welcome mat, offering me $20,000 to disappear, and I have to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing out loud. I am completely done playing the victim. I adjust the strap of my purse on my shoulder and turn my back on them without uttering a single word. I take a step toward the driveway, ready to walk to my car and leave this toxic prison behind me forever. Stop right there! Bradley barks, his voice suddenly sharp and commanding. Leave the keys, Vanessa. I pause on the top step and turn back to face him. He steps out onto the porch, pointing a finger directly at my luxury sedan parked in the circular driveway. I paid the insurance premium on that vehicle 3 days ago from my personal account. Bradley says, a smug, triumphant smile spreading across his face. According to our corporate lawyers, that makes it Belmont estate property. Hand over the keys right now. If you even try to open that car door, I will dial 911 and report the vehicle stolen the second you pull out of this driveway. The sheer pettiness of his demand is staggering. A man who claims to be a multimillionaire is weaponizing the police over a car insurance premium just to ensure I have absolutely nothing left. He wants to force me to walk down the street in yesterday's torn clothes, bruised and humiliated, carrying my purse like a vagrant. I do not argue with him. I do not fight for the car. My father currently has an entire fleet of armored vehicles idling in a private garage waiting for my arrival. I reach into my purse, my hand brushing past my wallet, and I pull out the heavy electronic key fob. I hold it up in the morning light. Bradley smirks, thinking he has won the ultimate victory. I open my fingers and let the keys drop. They hit the concrete porch with a loud clatter, landing right on top of the insulting divorce papers. As I bend my neck slightly to look at the discarded keys, a brilliant flash of green catches my eye. The morning sun is reflecting off a piece of jewelry resting against Ashley's chest. My breath catches in my throat. Resting right above the lapel of my stolen silk robe is a vintage teardrop emerald pendant surrounded by a thick halo of crushed diamonds. It is not just any piece of jewelry. It is a bespoke Croft family heirloom. My grandfather Arthur Croft gave it to me on my 18th birthday. The emerald was mined in Colombia, and the piece is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. I had kept it hidden in a velvet box at the very back of my personal safe, terrified that the greedy Belmont family would discover the truth about my immense family wealth. Bradley must have rummaged through my safe after he locked me out last night, found the pendant, assumed it was a cheap thrift store costume piece, and gifted it to his mistress to celebrate their victory. I do not scream. I do not snatch it from her neck. The cold, calculating instincts of the Croft bloodline take complete control. I smoothly slide my smartphone out of my clutch. I bring the camera up level with Ashley's chest. Before either Bradley or Ashley can react to my sudden movement, I tap the screen. The camera shutter clicks loudly in the quiet morning air. I capture a crystal-clear, high-resolution image of Ashley wearing the unmistakable emerald pendant. "What are you doing?" Ashley snaps, her voice rising in sudden panic as her hand flies up to cover her chest. Bradley steps forward, his face flushing with anger. "Give me that phone right now, you crazy witch." I take a slow step backward out of his reach. I look right into Ashley's panicked eyes with a chilling, completely detached smile. "Enjoy the necklace, Ashley." I say, my voice steady, echoing with a quiet authority they have never heard from me before. "It is a truly beautiful piece. But you should know my grandfather reported that specific vintage emerald stolen to the FBI exactly 3 years ago. Wearing it, possessing it, or receiving it as a gift is a federal felony." Ashley's face drains of all color. Her hand drops away from the pendant as if the gems have suddenly caught fire. Bradley freezes in his tracks, his arrogant sneer replaced by a look of sheer confusion and rising terror. They both stare at me, completely paralyzed on the driveway, their brains failing to process how the penniless orphan they abused just casually dropped the name of a federal intelligence agency. I do not wait for their response. I turn my back on the Belmont mansion for the very last time and walk confidently down the long, paved driveway. The cool morning breeze hits my face, and the sting of my bruised cheek feels like a badge of honor. As I reach the curb at the end of the property line, a sleek black town car with heavily tinted windows glides silently to a stop right in front of me. The driver, a large man wearing a dark suit and an earpiece, steps out instantly and opens the rear passenger door for me. I slide into the luxurious leather interior, leaving my ruined marriage and the terrified Belmont family far behind me in the dust. The heavy leather door of the town car thudded shut, sealing me inside a bulletproof cocoon of absolute silence. The driver did not ask for a destination. He already knew exactly where to go. As the car pulled away from the curb, I did not look back at the suburban mansion. My focus was entirely on the skyline looming in the distance. The drive to Manhattan took less than an hour, but it felt like traveling between two completely different dimensions. I was leaving behind a world of counterfeit wealth and petty country club politics to re-enter the epicenter of global financial power. The vehicle bypassed the main entrance of the towering glass skyscraper and slipped down into a highly secured subterranean garage. A private express elevator awaited me, requiring a retinal scan from the driver before the polished steel doors glided open. The ascent to the top floor was smooth and rapid, popping my ears as we bypassed 90 stories of corporate offices. When the doors finally opened, I stepped directly into the sprawling minimalist penthouse that served as the personal fortress of the most feared private equity titan in America. The penthouse was a monument to raw, unyielding power. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a commanding 360-degree view of the city, placing the entire world literally beneath our feet. Standing by the glass holding a tumbler of bourbon was Jonathan Croft, my father. He did not look like a man in his late 60s. He moved with the predatory grace of a much younger man, his tailored charcoal suit fitting perfectly over his broad shoulders. He turned around as my heels clicked against the polished marble floor. There was no dramatic run into his arms, no tearful embrace. We were Crofts. We communicated in leverage strategy and results, but as he stepped into the light, his piercing gray eyes locked immediately onto the left side of my face. The tumbler of bourbon in his hand froze midway to his mouth. The temperature in the massive room seemed to drop 10 degrees in a single second. The calculated, composed billionaire vanished, entirely replaced by a father staring at the dark, swollen bruise inflicted by a man he had never met. "Who specifically put their hands on you?" Jonathan asked, his voice a low, terrifying rumble that promised absolute devastation. His gray eyes narrowed into dangerous slits. "I told you 7 years ago that those bottom feeders would eventually show their true colors. I warned you that hiding your identity and playing the role of a struggling commoner would only attract parasites." I walked over to the sleek leather sofa and dropped my clutch onto the glass coffee table. I had to know I could do it, Dad. I looked him dead in the eye, refusing to back down from his intimidating presence. 7 years ago, I came to you with my first business plan and a partner I trusted. Instead of letting me build it, you initiated a hostile takeover and crushed my partner to dust just to protect me from a bad deal. You suffocated me with your power. I dropped the Croft name and took Mom's maiden name because I needed to prove that my success was my own. I needed to know that my crisis management agency thrived because I was brilliant, not just because I had access to a limitless trust fund. Jonathan set his glass down on a side table with a heavy thud. He crossed the room, stopping just inches from me. He reached out his hand, hovering over my bruised cheek without actually touching the tender skin. "I crushed your partner because he was quietly embezzling your startup capital," he stated, matter-of-factly offering no apologies for his ruthless tactics. "And I let you walk away for 7 years because I respected your fire. You built a phenomenal agency from scratch, Vanessa. You proved your point brilliantly. But this, he pointed at my face, this changes the rules of engagement. I do not care about your need for independence anymore. The man who struck you will not simply be punished. I am going to erase him from the face of the earth. Jonathan turned on his heel and marched toward his massive desk. He picked up his secure phone, his fingers flying across the keypad. Get me acquisitions, he barked into the receiver. I want the Belmont Real Estate Group completely dismantled by noon. Trigger the hostile takeover protocols. Call in every single outstanding debt they hold. Find their biggest investors and offer them triple returns to pull out immediately. I want Gregory and Bradley Belmont locked out of their own headquarters before they finish their morning coffee. I lunged forward and slammed my hand down on the receiver, disconnecting the call. The dial tone echoed loudly in the quiet office. Jonathan stared at my hand covering the phone, his jaw tight. What are you doing, Vanessa? I am giving you the revenge you came here for. I am handing you their heads on a silver platter. I took a deep breath, matching his intense glare. A quick bankruptcy is an absolute mercy, I said, my voice dangerously calm. You bankrupt them today and they can play the victim. They can blame the market, they can blame a bad quarter, and they can go cry to their wealthy friends. They will file Chapter 11, hide their personal assets in offshore trusts, and live comfortably in their suburban mansion. I do not want them to have a quick execution. Jonathan tilted his head, a slow spark of dark curiosity replacing his initial fury. Go on, he instructed, crossing his arms over his chest. I want to dismantle their lives piece by piece, I explained, pacing in front of his desk. I want them to feel the walls slowly closing in. I want them to believe they are desperately clawing their way out of the pit, only to realize they are digging their own graves deeper. Bradley told me this morning that I was a nobody. He told me he was going to starve me out in court because he had all the power. I do not just want to take his company. I want to take his house. I want his cars. I want his mother's private trusts. I want everything they have ever valued. And most importantly, I want to look Bradley straight in the eye when he signs the document that guarantees his own complete and utter ruin. Jonathan stared at me for a long, silent moment. Then a slow, wicked smile spread across his face. He recognized the pure, unadulterated Croft ruthlessness radiating from his daughter. He stepped back from the phone, yielding the floor entirely to me. It is your operation, Vanessa. Tell me exactly what weapons you need. Before I could outline the first step of my sabotage campaign, a sharp knock at the heavy oak doors interrupted us. The doors opened immediately. Marcus Croft, Financial's head of global intelligence, strode into the room carrying a secure digital tablet. He was a man who practically lived in the shadows, monitoring every major financial movement in the corporate world. He nodded to Jonathan and then offered me a highly respectful bow, recognizing my return to the fold. Sir Ma'am, Marcus began holding out the glowing tablet. My automated alerts just triggered. Following the catastrophic scene at their anniversary gala last night, the Belmont Group is in full-scale panic. Their primary investors have already started sending withdrawal notices this morning. In a completely desperate bid to secure liquidity and avoid an immediate foreclosure on their waterfront properties, Gregory Belmont just submitted an emergency application for a $200 million bridge loan. Jonathan raised an eyebrow. $200 million. That is a massive sum for a company already drowning in toxic debt. Who did they submit the application to? Marcus allowed a thin, razor-sharp smile to touch his lips. That is the interesting part, sir. They submitted it to Apex Capital Solutions. They believe it is an independent mid-tier lending firm operating out of Delaware. They have no idea that Apex Capital Solutions is a wholly owned subsidiary of Croft Financial. They just knocked on our front door asking for a lifeline. Jonathan looked over at me, his eyes gleaming with the thrill of the hunt. He gestured toward the tablet in Marcus's hand. Well, Vanessa, you are the architect of this destruction. How do we respond to their cry for help? I walked over and took the tablet from Marcus. I stared at the digital application, seeing Gregory and Bradley's desperate digital signatures at the bottom of the form. I pictured Bradley standing on the porch this morning, bragging about his wealth while his mistress wore my stolen family heirloom. I pictured Patricia tossing $20,000 at my feet like it was a grand fortune. They were so arrogantly blind to the true predators swimming in their waters. Approve the preliminary application, I said, my voice echoing with chilling finality. Send them a message telling them we are highly interested in funding their $200 million loan. Make them believe they have just found their miracle salvation. But alter the standard contract terms before sending the final documents back to them. Make absolutely sure they put up everything as collateral: their corporate shares, their personal bank accounts, the suburban mansion, the luxury cars, and every single trust fund in Patricia's name. I step out of my father's towering Manhattan headquarters and into the bright midday sun. The air feels electric. For the first time in 7 years, I am not playing defense. I am the predator. I pull out my phone to order a black car back to my boutique agency, but a glaring red notification pops up on my screen. Action required. I tap the banking app. My personal checking account, the one I opened the week I married Bradley, shows a balance of 0. The joint savings account we were supposed to use for a summer house is locked. I open my digital wallet to switch to my platinum credit card. Declined. Account frozen by primary cardholder. Bradley actually thinks he can starve me out. He thinks cutting off my access to the Belmont money will send me crawling back to his doorstep in tears. He assumes I have no other resources because for 7 years I made sure he never saw my personal corporate accounts. He has no idea that the agency I built generates its own 7-figure revenue safely tucked away in a commercial bank he cannot touch. But his petty financial sabotage is just the opening volley. My phone buzzes violently in my hand. It is not an alert from my bank this time. It is a flood of notifications from social media. I open the flagship networking app, and the very first post on my feed makes my blood run cold, then boil. It is a statement from Bradley, professionally formatted and already boasting thousands of likes and shares. He has gone entirely on the offensive. The post claims that I suffered a severe mental breakdown at the anniversary gala. He writes that he is heartbroken by my sudden descent into instability. He paints a completely fabricated picture of a troubled woman who violently assaulted his elderly father on stage, forcing security to remove me for my own safety. He even has the audacity to ask his network for privacy and prayers during this difficult family crisis. Right below his post is a linked video from Patricia. My mother-in-law is sitting in her lavish sunroom, wearing minimal makeup, to look distressed, dabbing at her dry eyes with a tissue. She tells the camera how much they loved me, how they tried to save me from my impoverished background, and how my unhinged, violent behavior has shattered their family. The comments section is a cesspool of high society sycophants, sending their deepest sympathies to the Belmonts and calling for me to be institutionalized. They are trying to destroy my professional reputation before I even have a chance to secure legal counsel. It is the classic Belmont playbook: isolate the target, control the narrative, and crush their credibility. I hail a taxi, using cash from my clutch, and head straight to my crisis management agency. My firm occupies a sleek, modern loft space in the financial district. I designed every inch of it myself, from the frosted glass conference rooms to the exposed brick walls. It is my sanctuary. But the moment I walk through the double glass doors, the atmosphere is absolute chaos. Every single phone in the office is ringing simultaneously. My small, fiercely loyal team of 5 is scrambling, looking panicked and overwhelmed. Maya, my lead assistant and right-hand woman, practically sprints toward me the second I step off the elevator. She is clutching a tablet to her chest, her eyes wide with sheer terror. "Vanessa, thank God you are here," Maya says, her voice shaking. "It is a total bloodbath this morning. The Belmonts are calling everyone." "Take a breath, Maya," I say, calmly dropping my purse onto the reception desk. "Walk me through it. Exactly who is calling?" She pulls up a spreadsheet on her tablet, her finger trembling as she points to the highlighted rows. "Everyone. Bradley has been on the phone since 8 in the morning. He is calling our major corporate accounts. He is leveraging the Belmont Group's massive commercial real estate portfolio to intimidate our clients. He just told the CEO of Vanguard Logistics that if they do not drop our agency by noon, the Belmont Group will terminate their commercial leases across the entire tri-state area." I walk past her into the main bullpen. The ringing phones are a chorus of corporate panic. Vanguard just officially canceled their retainer. Maya continues following closely on my heels. And it is not just them. Sterling Tech called 10 minutes later. Then the Horizon Group. Bradley is telling them all about the gala. He is spreading those troubling rumors about your mental health, saying you are a liability and a risk to their brand image. We have lost 60% of our monthly billing in less than 2 hours. The team is terrified we are going to have to close the doors. I stand in the center of the bullpen. My team stops answering the phones, turning to look at me. They expect me to break down. They expect me to order them to draft desperate press releases or beg the clients to stay. They know how hard I worked to secure those contracts. They know I built this firm from a single desk in a moldy apartment into a premier agency. I look around at the people who have stood by me, the people who actually respect my mind and my work ethic. I smile. It is not a forced, brave smile. It is a genuine predatory grin. Let them walk, I say, my voice carrying clearly across the quiet office. Maya stares at me as if I have lost my mind. Vanessa, we are talking about millions of dollars in canceled retainers. If we let them walk, we will not be able to make payroll by the end of the quarter. Bradley is destroying everything you built. Bradley is doing exactly what I want him to do, I reply, walking over to the nearest whiteboard and picking up a black marker. I draw a large circle writing the word Belmont in the center. I look back at my panicked team. Listen to me carefully. The Belmont Group is a sinking ship. They are drowning in toxic debt, and they are currently engaging in massive systemic federal fraud to keep themselves afloat. The destruction of their empire is not a possibility. It is an absolute certainty, and it is going to happen very, very soon. I draw several lines radiating outward from the Belmont circle, writing the names of the clients who just abandoned us. When the Belmont ship finally goes down, the blast radius is going to be spectacular. I explain, tapping the board with the marker. The media is going to dissect every single vendor partner and associate tied to Gregory and Bradley. These companies that are canceling our retainers today out of fear are going to find themselves plastered across the front page of the Financial Times, guilty by association. They are going to be facing the worst public relations nightmare of their entire corporate lives. Maya's eyes widen as she begins to understand the strategy. The panic in her posture slowly dissolves, replaced by a sharp, calculating focus. And when they are desperate, I continue lowering my voice to a dangerous, commanding pitch. When their stock prices are tanking and their shareholders are demanding answers, who do you think they are going to call to manage the fallout? They are going to call the premier crisis management agency in the city. They will come begging us to fix the mess Bradley Belmont dragged them into. And when they do, we are going to triple our standard retainer fees. The team exchanges glances. The atmosphere in the room shifts instantly from fear to predatory anticipation. They trust me. They know I do not make promises I cannot keep. Do not answer another phone call today. I instruct them, tossing the marker onto the tray. Let the accounts go. Document every single cancellation note, the exact reason they give, and save every threatening email Bradley sends to them. We are going to build an ironclad file of corporate extortion. Take the rest of the week to prepare our crisis response frameworks. We are going to be very busy when the blood starts flowing. I walk into my private corner office and shut the glass door. The quiet hum of the city traffic filters through the large windows. I sit down at my desk and open my laptop, ready to review the bridge loan documents my father's acquisitions team is preparing for the Belmonts. They are going to sign away their souls, completely unaware that the executioner is already in the room. My cell phone chimes with a sharp, obnoxious tone on the glass desk. I glance down at the screen. It is a direct text message from Bradley. I pick up the phone and open the message. Bradley has sent me a screenshot of my agency's public business profiles. Our Google and Yelp reviews are absolutely plummeting. A coordinated swarm of anonymous bot accounts is flooding the pages with one-star ratings, calling my business a scam, a fraud, and claiming the owner is a violent lunatic. It is a digital assassination attempt funded and orchestrated by my soon-to-be ex-husband. Beneath the screenshot is a text from Bradley. The sheer arrogance of his words practically oozes through the digital screen. Your little hobby is officially dead, Vanessa. No one will ever hire a crazy woman. Sign the settlement papers my mother gave you. Beg for your old job back, and I might let you answer Ashley's phones. I read the text twice. He really thinks he is a king. He genuinely believes he holds my entire future in the palm of his hand. He has no idea that his petty extortion attempt is the exact rope he needs to hang himself. I do not reply to him. I do not show anger or fear. I simply take a screenshot of his threatening message and the evidence of his bot campaign. I open a new email draft addressed to Marcus, my father's head of global intelligence, and the lead prosecutors on Croft Financial's elite legal team. I attach the screenshots to the email. I add a brief, emotionless note. Add this to the impending fraud and corporate extortion charges. The target is accelerating his own demise. Proceed with the poisoned bridge loan immediately. I hit send, set the phone face down on my desk, and get back to work. The trap is perfectly set, and the Belmonts are walking right into the jaws of the beast. The Sterling Heritage Club is an impenetrable fortress of old money and extreme privilege hidden in the very heart of Manhattan. The sprawling dining room smells faintly of rare orchids and expensive truffle oil. I am seated in a private velvet-lined alcove by the towering bay windows, enjoying a perfectly seared branzino across from David Vance. David is the billionaire CEO of Vance Technologies. He is one of the few monumental clients who flatly refused to drop my agency this morning when Bradley made his threatening phone calls. David knows exceptional talent when he sees it, and he knows that a sinking real estate firm like the Belmont Group holds absolutely no real leverage over a global tech conglomerate. We are quietly finalizing a massive international crisis management retainer, ignoring the morning chaos completely. I take a sip of sparkling water, my mind sharp and entirely focused. David smiles, raising his crystal glass to toast our new contract. Before our glasses can even touch, a loud, obnoxious burst of laughter echoes across the serene dining room. I do not even have to turn my head to know who just walked through the velvet-draped entrance. The sheer volume of their profound entitlement precedes them. Bradley Belmont strides into the exclusive dining room like a conquering emperor. He is flanked by his father Gregory, his mother Patricia, and his mistress Ashley. They are practically vibrating with arrogance. They just walked out of my father's subsidiary building, firmly believing they secured a $200 million lifeline to save their failing empire. They believe they are untouchable. They believe they have won the ultimate game. The maitre d' guides them to a large mahogany table in the direct center of the room. Bradley waves his hand dismissively, ordering 2 bottles of their most expensive vintage champagne without even glancing at a leather-bound menu. Ashley is practically glowing, hanging tightly onto his bicep. Patricia sits down with a heavy sigh of profound satisfaction, adjusting her expensive cashmere wrap. I watch their reflection in the massive window glass. They are toasting to their own genius. They are celebrating the capital advance they received, a tiny fraction of the bridge loan released immediately upon signing those poisoned contracts. They are drinking champagne bought with money that my father technically owns. David notices my gaze shifting. He looks over his shoulder and lets out a quiet scoff. The Belmonts, David says, shaking his head in mild disgust. Loud, desperate, and entirely over-leveraged. I heard about their little bridge loan application this morning. The entire financial district is laughing behind their backs. I smile warmly at David. Let them enjoy their champagne, David. It is going to be the absolute last expensive meal they ever eat. Suddenly, the obnoxious laughter from the center table stops dead. The silence is sharp and immediate. I can feel the heavy weight of a stare burning directly into the side of my head. I turn slowly in my tufted leather chair. Bradley is standing up. His face is flushed a deep, ugly red. He is staring directly at me. His arrogant victory smile has vanished entirely, replaced by an expression of supreme insulted rage. He simply cannot fathom how I am sitting in one of the most exclusive clubs in the world, dining with a tech titan only hours after he supposedly ruined my life, froze my bank accounts, and destroyed my business reputation. He pushes his chair back so violently it scrapes against the polished hardwood floor. He marches across the dining room, his heavy footsteps drawing the annoyed stares of several high-profile guests. He does not care about club etiquette. His fragile ego requires immediate public validation. He needs to crush me to prove his absolute dominance. What in the world are you doing here? Vanessa Bradley demands, his voice booming unpleasantly across the quiet alcove. He steps right up to my table, slamming his flat hand down on the crisp white linen. He glares at David, who simply raises a calm eyebrow at the aggressive intrusion. I am having lunch, Bradley, I say, my voice perfectly level and quiet. I suggest you go back to your table and do the same before you embarrass yourself. Bradley lets out a harsh, barking laugh. Embarrass myself? You are the one who should be hiding in a dark hole. He turns his head and snaps his fingers wildly at a passing waiter. Get the club manager right now. Bring Charles here immediately. The waiter rushes off, looking terrified by the sudden outburst. Bradley turns his attention back to David. I do not know what kind of lies this woman is spinning for you, sir, but you need to walk away immediately. This woman is my broke, unstable ex-wife. She is currently having a massive psychological breakdown. She violently attacked my father last night at a charity gala, and now she is stalking me across the city. She is completely unhinged and severely harassing my family. David sets his silver fork down very slowly. He looks at Bradley with an expression of pure, unadulterated disgust. I assure you, young man, the only person acting unhinged at this table is you. Bradley ignores him completely. He points a rigid finger directly at my face. You are pathetic, Vanessa. I froze your accounts this morning. I canceled your credit cards. I know for a definitive fact you do not have a single dime to your name. You are trespassing in a private club, trying to con rich men into buying you lunch. The sound of sharp clicking heels signals the arrival of reinforcements. Patricia and Ashley step up right behind Bradley, having abandoned their expensive champagne to join the public execution. Patricia looks me up and down, her lip curling into a vicious, judgmental sneer. You really have absolutely no shame, Patricia announces loudly, making sure the surrounding tables can hear every single word of her insult. You are nothing but a desperate gold digger who finally lost her touch. We gave you everything and you threw it away because you were too mentally unstable to handle a real marriage. Now you are reduced to stalking my son while he celebrates his brilliant business victories. It is genuinely tragic to watch. Ashley steps forward, leaning heavily against Bradley's shoulder. She wants to ensure her presence is felt. She reaches up to adjust her hair deliberately, pushing her sleeve back to expose her wrist. A brand new, incredibly thick diamond tennis bracelet catches the light of the crystal chandelier overhead. The stones are massive, perfectly cut, and blindingly bright. Bradley bought this for me an hour ago, Ashley says, her voice dripping with extreme malice and false pity. He used the cash advance from his massive new loan. We are celebrating our real future together. A future built on actual success, not your pathetic little event planning fantasies. You are just jealous because you are finally seeing what it looks like when a man treats a woman he actually respects. I look at the heavy diamond bracelet. I look at Ashley's smug painted face. I look at Patricia's cruel sneer and Bradley's puffed-up chest. They are all standing there, basking in their perceived superiority, completely blinded by their own phenomenal ignorance. They are proudly flexing jewelry bought with a loan designed to utterly bankrupt them. I do not raise my voice. I do not flinch. I take a calm, deliberate sip of my sparkling water. Right on cue, Charles, the distinguished general manager of the Sterling Heritage Club, arrives at our table. He is accompanied by 3 massive security guards wearing tailored black suits and discreet communication earpieces. Charles looks incredibly tense, his hands clasped tightly behind his back. Bradley turns to him, immediately pointing a demanding finger at my face. Charles, thank God. I need this woman removed from the premises immediately. She is my ex-wife. She is mentally unstable. She is not a member here, and she is actively harassing my family. Throw her out on the street where she belongs. Patricia nods in stern agreement. Make sure she is escorted entirely off the block, Charles. We do not want her waiting outside by our vehicles. I place my linen napkin on the table and look directly at Charles. I give him a very small, almost imperceptible nod. Charles does not look at me. He does not gesture toward me. He turns his body entirely to face Bradley Belmont. He signals the 3 heavy-set security guards with a sharp flick of his wrist. The guards instantly step forward in perfect unison, forming a tight, inescapable physical wall completely surrounding Bradley, Patricia, and Ashley. Bradley frowns, taking a sudden step back, as a guard blocks his path. "What are you doing?" Bradley asks, his voice losing a fraction of its booming confidence. "I am sorry, Mr. Belmont," Charles says, his voice ringing with icy professional detachment. "But your club membership dues bounced this morning. Every single credit card on your file was declined by your bank for insufficient funds. You are currently trespassing in a private establishment." Bradley's face goes totally slack. The arrogant color completely drains from his cheeks. "That is impossible. I just secured $200 million in capital. My accounts are perfectly fine. Run the cards again. You are making a massive mistake." "There is no mistake," Charles replies, his tone dropping to a firm, unyielding command. "Furthermore, Ms. Croft is a platinum board member here. She holds ultimate authority over membership terminations. She is enjoying a private lunch, and you are creating a severe disturbance. We must ask you to leave the property immediately, or these gentlemen will physically remove you." The silence that crashes down on the Belmont family is absolute. Patricia gasps, taking a stumbling step backward. Ashley drops her wrist, her hand flying to cover her mouth in pure shock. Bradley stands entirely frozen, his brain desperately trying to catch up to the reality of the situation. He stares at Charles, his eyes wide and uncomprehending. Croft Bradley repeats the words, stumbling awkwardly out of his mouth. He looks at me, his brow furrowed in deep, frantic confusion. He sneers, trying to summon his broken bravado. "Croft. Her name is Vanessa Lane. She is a nobody from nowhere." I push my chair back and stand up slowly. I smooth the front of my designer dress, feeling the absolute power of my true identity radiate through my veins. I reach into my clutch and pull out a solid gold, impossibly heavy Croft Financial corporate card. The metal gleams brightly under the dining room lights. I drop it onto the center of the mahogany table. It lands with a heavy, definitive clank that echoes across the quiet room. I look Bradley dead in his terrified, widening eyes. "Names can change, Bradley," I say, my voice cold, lethal, and ringing with the full authority of the Croft Empire, "but bankruptcy is forever." I step out of the shadows of the master control booth and walk down the narrow, dimly lit service staircase that leads directly to the backstage area. The heavy, rhythmic click of my stilettos against the metal grating is the only sound in the corridor. I am no longer watching them through a pane of reinforced glass or a high-definition monitor. It is time to breathe the same air. It is time to look them in the eyes when their empire burns to ashes. I push open the concealed access door and step onto the right wing of the grand stage. The emergency lighting casts long, distorted shadows across the mahogany floorboards. Gregory and Bradley are still frozen behind the clear acrylic podium, staring at the glowing red letters of the teleprompter as if the machine has suddenly sprouted fangs. Down on the main floor, Patricia and Ashley are huddled together near the front row of empty velvet chairs, their eyes darting wildly toward the heavy oak doors that just locked them inside. I do not say a word. I simply stand at the edge of the stage, my posture perfectly straight, my hands relaxed at my sides. Bradley is the first to sense my presence. He snaps his head to the right, his eyes wide and bloodshot. The moment he sees me standing there wearing a pristine charcoal gray tailored suit, his shock instantly morphs into a desperate feral rage. The sheer cognitive dissonance of seeing me here in complete control of his venue shatters whatever fragile grip he still has on reality. "You," Bradley screams, his voice cracking violently as it echoes through the cavernous, empty ballroom. He points a shaking finger at me. "I knew it. I knew you were behind this technical glitch. You paid off the hotel staff, didn't you? You hacked the network." Patricia gasps loudly, stepping forward and pointing her designer clutch at me like a weapon. "Are you completely insane, Vanessa? We have a shareholder summit in 30 minutes. Unlock those doors right now and get out of this building before we have you arrested for corporate sabotage." I walk slowly towards the center of the stage. My heels click methodically against the wood, a slow, deliberate countdown to their destruction. I stop a few feet away from Gregory, who is staring at me with a look of pure, unadulterated terror. Unlike his foolish son and his arrogant wife, Gregory has survived in the financial sector just long enough to recognize a fatal checkmate when he sees one. He looks at the teleprompter, then looks at me, his chest heaving with shallow, panicked breaths. There is no technical glitch, Bradley, I say, my voice projecting clearly through the dead silence of the room. It is perfectly calm. It is devoid of any anger or malice. It is the cold, absolute tone of a judge delivering a final verdict. And there is no shareholder summit. Bradley scoffs, marching around the podium to close the distance between us. You do not dictate what happens here, you delusional psycho. We secured $200 million yesterday. The Belmont Group is saved. Our shareholders are walking through those doors in exactly 20 minutes to hear about my brilliant acquisition strategy. Your shareholders are currently receiving an emergency email from the Securities and Exchange Commission. I reply smoothly, not breaking eye contact. The summit has been officially canceled by federal regulators. Gregory lets out a strangled wheezing sound, clutching the edges of the podium to keep his knees from buckling. What have you done? He whispers, his voice trembling so violently it is barely audible. I did exactly what you taught me to do, Gregory, I say, turning my sharp gaze to the patriarch of the Belmont family. For 7 years you taught me that loyalty is a weakness. You taught me that family is just a tool for financial leverage. You taught me that the only thing that matters in this world is ruthless, absolute control. So I took control. Bradley steps into my personal space, attempting to use his physical size to intimidate me. It is a pathetic, desperate tactic of a man who has run out of ammunition. Shut up. You are talking absolute garbage. You do not have the power to cancel our summit. We have the capital. We signed the bridge loan. You signed a death warrant, I correct him, my voice dropping to a dangerous, icy pitch. I do not step back. I do not flinch. Did you actually read the compliance addendum Elias Vance handed you yesterday, Bradley? Did you bother to look at the fine print before you arrogantly scrawled your signature across the bottom line? Bradley blinks, a flash of genuine confusion cutting through his rage. That was a standard morality clause. It means nothing. It means everything I say, offering him a slow, predatory smile. It is a highly customized legal trigger drafted specifically for you. It states that Apex Capital, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Croft Financial, has the absolute right to seize 100% of your pledged collateral the exact second your company is implicated in a federal crime. Down on the floor, Patricia lets out a sharp, hysterical laugh. A federal crime. You are completely unhinged. We are upstanding citizens. We are the Belmonts. You are currently under active investigation for systemic corporate fraud, wire fraud, and the gross misappropriation of investor funds, I state loudly, my voice ringing out to ensure Patricia hears every single syllable. The bridge loan application you submitted to Apex Capital contained deliberately falsified asset valuations. You lied to a federal lending institution to secure capital. That is a severe federal offense. Gregory drops to his knees behind the podium. He covers his face with his hands, letting out a wretched, guttural sob. He knows it is true. He knows I have the evidence. And because you signed that morality clause, Bradley, I continue turning my focus back to my ex-husband. I triggered the immediate seizure of your collateral at 6 o'clock this morning. Your corporate accounts are frozen. The Belmont estate is currently being padlocked by my private security team. The luxury cars have been impounded, and those 3 generational trust funds your mother holds so dear. I pause, letting the absolute horror of the moment wash over them. They belong to me now. No! Patricia screams, dropping her designer purse onto the floor. She grabs the edge of the stage, her face twisted in pure agony. You cannot take my trusts. That is my money. That is my family's legacy. You have no right. I look down at her, feeling absolutely nothing. You pledged them as collateral, Patricia. You bet your legacy on your son's brilliance, and your son lost. Ashley, who has been standing silently in the shadows, suddenly steps forward. Her face is pale, her eyes darting frantically between Bradley and me. Wait, she stammers, her voice shaking. If the accounts are frozen, what about the cash advance? What about the money he gave me? She instinctively reaches for her wrist, gripping the heavy diamond tennis bracelet Bradley bought her just yesterday. The cash advance was immediately recalled, I inform her coldly. The jeweler was notified of the fraudulent transaction 30 minutes ago. If you do not hand that bracelet over to federal authorities by noon, you will be charged with receiving stolen property." Ashley lets out a sharp gasp, ripping her hand away from the diamonds as if they are suddenly burning her skin. She takes 2 large steps away from Bradley, distancing herself from the sinking ship with lightning speed. Bradley ignores her entirely. He is staring at me, his chest heaving, his eyes wide and completely unmoored from reality. He shakes his head violently, refusing to accept the absolute totality of his defeat. "You cannot do this," Bradley whispers, his voice stripped of all its booming arrogance. It is a broken, hollow sound. "You were nothing. You were just a broke girl we saved from the gutter. You were supposed to stay in your place." "I was never in my place, Bradley," I reply softly. I step closer to him, stopping inches from his face. "I was exactly where I needed to be to tear your empire down from the inside out. I gave you every opportunity to walk away with a shred of dignity. I offered you a quiet divorce. I asked for nothing. But you had to try and destroy my agency. You had to try and ruin my reputation. You forced my hand." I turn away from him, walking back toward the right wing of the stage. The heavy oak doors at the back of the ballroom unlock with a loud, synchronized electronic clack. The doors swing open, flooding the dark room with the bright, blinding light of the hallway. A dozen federal agents in dark windbreakers step into the ballroom, their badges flashing under the emergency lights. They are accompanied by my lead attorney and Marcus, who is holding a thick stack of finalized seizure warrants. Gregory Belmont does not even stand up. He remains on his knees behind the podium, weeping into his hands as the agents march down the center aisle. Patricia collapses into a velvet chair, burying her face in her arms as she realizes her precious high society life is officially over. Ashley is already edging toward the side exit, desperately trying to unfasten the diamond bracelet from her wrist. Bradley stands completely frozen in the center of the stage. The federal agents flank him on both sides, reading him his rights, but he does not seem to hear them. He just stares at me as I walk into the shadows of the backstage corridor. I do not look back. The Belmont Group is dead, and my real life is just beginning. The heavy oak doors at the back of the grand ballroom do not just open. They burst inward with a violent, resounding crash. A tidal wave of furious, panicked shareholders floods into the venue. They are clutching their smartphones, waving them in the air like lit torches. The Securities and Exchange Commission email has just hit their inboxes, announcing an immediate halt on all Belmont Group trading, pending a federal fraud investigation. The noise is deafening. It is a chaotic rising roar of hundreds of wealthy investors realizing their portfolios are currently disintegrating into thin air. Gregory and Bradley Belmont scramble to the front of the stage. The federal agents who had briefly flanked them step back into the deep shadows of the wings, perfectly content to let the executives face the wrath of the mob before the handcuffs officially click shut. Gregory is sweating profusely. Large, dark stains are already blooming under the arms of his bespoke suit. He grips the edges of the clear acrylic podium, his knuckles turning stark white. He looks down at the teleprompter screen embedded in the floor, desperate for his carefully curated talking points, desperate for the financial spin that usually saves him. The screen remains locked on a single glowing red message: "Access denied. Property of Croft Financial." Gregory taps the microphone. It lets out a harsh, piercing feedback squeal that forces the front row of shareholders to cover their ears. He forces a smile, but it is a grotesque, trembling grimace. He raises his hands in a placating gesture, opening his mouth to deliver a lie he has not yet fully formulated. Before Gregory can speak a single word, a blinding flash of light illuminates the entire room. The distraction does not come from the stage. It comes from the massive floor-to-ceiling glass walls that line the entire western side of the ballroom, overlooking the busy city avenue. The angry shareholders fall silent, their heads turning in unison toward the street. A perfectly synchronized fleet of 6 armored black SUVs pulls up to the curb, moving with the aggressive, militant precision of a presidential motorcade. The vehicles block the entire lane of traffic. The heavy tinted doors of the lead vehicles open simultaneously. A dozen elite corporate lawyers step out onto the pavement. They are moving in perfect formation, carrying heavy leather briefcases, their expressions carved from solid stone. They secure a perimeter around the center vehicle. The rear door of the flagship SUV swings open. My father, Jonathan Croft, steps out into the afternoon light. He is a titan of global finance, a man whose mere presence can shift international markets. He wears a tailored charcoal suit, his silver hair perfectly styled, his jaw set in an expression of absolute terrifying authority. The shareholders inside the ballroom recognize him instantly. A collective gasp ripples through the massive crowd. The Belmont Group is a regional player, but Jonathan Croft is a global kingmaker. Then I step out of the vehicle and stand directly beside him. I am no longer wearing the modest, understated business wear of a struggling event planner. I am draped in immaculate high-end couture. I am wearing a striking razor-sharp white blazer with gold hardware that catches the sunlight, paired with a silk-tailored trouser that screams generational wealth. My posture is flawless. My chin is raised. I am radiating the exact kind of predatory power my father spent decades teaching me to wield. The shareholders inside the glass-walled venue watch in absolute stunned silence as my father offers me his arm. We walk together toward the main entrance, flanked by the army of relentless corporate attorneys. We push through the main doors and step into the grand ballroom. The sea of angry shareholders instantly parts for us. They step aside, clearing a wide, direct path down the center aisle. They can feel the sheer gravity of the moment. They know they are witnessing an execution. On the stage, Bradley is pale and hyperventilating. His eyes are darting wildly between my father, the lawyers, and me. He is watching the woman he called a broke, unstable liability walk into the room as the undeniable heir to a financial empire that could buy and sell his entire bloodline before breakfast. His mouth opens, but no sound comes out. His brain has completely short-circuited. Down on the ballroom floor, standing near the VIP seating area, Patricia Belmont snaps. The sight of me in high couture walking arm in arm with Jonathan Croft shatters the very foundation of her reality. She cannot process the immense power dynamic shift. She still believes she is the queen of this venue. She still believes she dictates who is allowed to breathe her air. Security! Patricia screams, her voice shrill and hysterical as it echoes across the cavernous room. She waves her arms frantically, signaling the venue's private security detail stationed along the walls. Grab that woman immediately. She is a trespasser. She is a dangerous, mentally unstable stalker. Throw her out of this building right now. 4 heavily muscled security guards in sharp black suits converge near the front of the stage. Patricia points a trembling, manicured finger directly at my face. "Do not just stand there," Patricia shrieks, her face twisted in an ugly, desperate mask of hatred. "Grab her! Throw her out on the street!" The head of security, a broad-shouldered man with a tactical earpiece, steps forward. He does not reach for me. He does not even look at me. He stops directly in front of Patricia Belmont. He calmly crosses his massive arms over his chest and looks down at her with an expression of complete indifference. "I am sorry, Mrs. Belmont," the head of security says, his voice cold and loud enough for the surrounding shareholders to hear. "But your event planning contract is void. Our security firm was acquired this morning by Croft Financial." Patricia freezes her hand suspended in midair. She stares at the large man, her eyes wide with shock. "What are you talking about? I demand you remove her." The security chief steps aside, clearing my path to the stage. "We take our orders from Ms. Croft now," he states with absolute finality. Patricia lets out a strangled, breathless sound. She stumbles backward, her designer heels catching on the carpet. She looks at her husband on the stage, but Gregory is still gripping the podium, completely paralyzed by fear. Ashley has already abandoned the VIP section, melting into the back of the crowd, desperately trying to hide her face from the incoming press. My father and I reach the base of the stage stairs. I release his arm. He gives me a single proud nod of encouragement. I walk up the short flight of stairs, the click of my heels echoing sharply over the silent, captivated audience. I step onto the stage, stopping just a few feet away from the Belmont men. Bradley is shaking. A cold sweat is dripping down his temples, soaking the collar of his expensive dress shirt. He looks at me, then looks past me to the army of Croft financial lawyers holding the seizure warrants. The horrifying connection finally clicks into place in his slow, arrogant mind. The frozen accounts, the ruined credit cards, the perfectly timed bridge loan, the sudden catastrophic collapse of everything he thought he owned. "You set us up," Bradley whispers, his voice trembling so violently he can barely form the words. "You planned all of this." Before I can answer, the massive wall-to-wall LED screens behind the stage flare to life with a blinding intensity. The screens do not show the Belmont Group's optimistic quarterly projections or their polished marketing materials. The screens display highly classified, undeniably damning financial records. High-resolution images of wire transfers to offshore accounts. Falsified asset appraisal documents side by side with the actual abysmal market values. A glowing highlighted ledger showing exactly how much of the investor's money Bradley Belmont funneled into his personal accounts to buy diamond tennis bracelets and luxury sports cars. The shareholders in the room erupt into a furious roar. They are screaming, pointing at the screens, demanding immediate federal arrests. The raw evidence of their stolen wealth is flashing right in front of their eyes. Bradley turns around and sees the LED screens displaying his crimes in 50-foot-high letters. Absolute panic takes over his entire nervous system. He scrambles backward, tripping over a microphone wire. He lunges toward the side of the stage, desperately reaching for the heavy metal lever of the main power switch box mounted on the wall. He thinks if he can just cut the power, if he can just turn off the screens, he can somehow stop the truth from existing. He grabs the heavy switch with both hands and yanks it downward with all his remaining strength. The lever snaps off in his hands. It is entirely disconnected from the main grid. I step up to the main podium, gently pushing a paralyzed Gregory Belmont out of my way. I grip the edges of the clear acrylic stand, looking out over the sea of furious investors, the flashing cameras and the federal agents moving in from the wings. The power in the room belongs entirely to me. I tap the microphone once. The sharp, clear sound cuts through the shouting crowd, instantly commanding their absolute silence. "Good evening, shareholders," I say, my voice steady, powerful, and ringing with total authority. "My name is Vanessa Croft, and I believe we need to talk about where your money has actually been going." I press a small, discreet remote hidden in the palm of my hand. The massive LED screens behind me instantly shift from the Belmont Group's optimistic, highly fabricated quarterly projections to a densely packed, color-coded financial spreadsheet. The numbers are staggering, and almost all of them are glowing in a harsh, condemning red. For the past 3 years, I project my voice, letting it echo off the crystal chandeliers and the high ceilings of the ballroom. Executive Vice President Bradley Belmont has been operating a sophisticated shadow ledger. He has systematically siphoned capital from your operational reserves, channeling it through a network of untraceable shell companies based in the Cayman Islands and Cyprus. I press the button again. A complicated, undeniable web of corporate logos, fake vendor contracts, and offshore bank routing numbers appears on the 50-foot screens. The shareholders lean forward in their velvet chairs. The shocked silence in the room is entirely replaced by a growing, venomous murmur. "These funds were not reinvested into the commercial properties you were promised." I continue pacing slowly across the front of the stage. My tone is conversational, treating their financial ruin like a standard marketing presentation. "They were not used to secure new zoning permits or upgrade your existing portfolio." Gregory Belmont, your CEO, was entirely aware of this catastrophic hemorrhage. Instead of reporting the severe crippling debt to the board of directors, he chose to falsify the quarterly earnings reports. He artificially inflated the stock price, keeping his own massive salary intact, while your investments bled dry. Gregory tries to speak, but his voice fails him. He clutches his chest, his mouth opening and closing soundlessly. "Let us look at some specific expenditures," I say, pausing near the clear acrylic podium. I press the remote. A massive, high-definition photograph of a limited edition, cherry-red Aston Martin fills the screen. Placed directly next to it is a scanned, certified copy of a wire transfer receipt. 2 weeks ago, Bradley authorized a wire transfer of $450,000 from the Belmont Group's primary construction escrow account. I state, my voice cutting through the rising anger of the crowd. This money was strictly earmarked for the structural reinforcement of the downtown plaza project. Instead, it was wired directly to an exotic auto dealership in Miami to purchase this vehicle for his mistress Ashley. The crowd explodes. Men in expensive tailored suits are standing up shouting obscenities at the stage. Women are pointing accusingly at the Belmont family. The fury of wealthy people realizing they have been conned is a terrifying primal force. The volume in the room shakes the glass walls. I do not let the momentum drop. I press the button again. The sports car vanishes, replaced by a brilliant macro photograph of an antique diamond and sapphire heirloom necklace. It is the exact necklace Patricia Belmont claimed I had stolen. It is the necklace she used to justify locking me out of my own home and freezing my personal bank accounts. This piece of jewelry, I say, raising my voice to carry over the mounting chaos, was reported stolen by Patricia Belmont. She filed a false police report to harass me. But as you can clearly see on the screen, the necklace was never stolen. It was sold. Another document appears next to the glowing image of the necklace. It is a certified bill of sale from a highly discreet international auction house based in Switzerland. Bradley Belmont secretly sold his mother's prized heirloom necklace at auction in Geneva 6 months ago for $2.1 million. I reveal looking directly down at Patricia. He needed the cash to cover a massive margin call on a failed personal investment. And to hide his tracks, he recently used another $300,000 of shareholder money to purchase a high-quality cubic zirconia replica for his mother to wear. Patricia lets out a sound that is half shriek, half sob. Her hands fly to her throat, clawing frantically at the heavy necklace she is currently wearing. She rips it off the intricate clasp, snapping under the force, and hurls the fake jewels onto the floor as if they are burning her skin. She begins to hyperventilate completely and utterly humiliated in front of the exact high society peers she spent her entire life trying to impress. She collapses into her chair, burying her face in her hands. Bradley is completely paralyzed. He is backed against the acrylic podium, his eyes wide and vacant. It is a lie, he finally stammers, his voice weak and pathetic over the unamplified air. She fabricated these documents. The FBI Cyber Division has already authenticated every single byte of data on these screens, Bradley, I say, stepping closer to him. I do not blink. Your digital footprint was incredibly sloppy. You used your corporate email to authorize the offshore transfers. You left a trail a mile wide because you genuinely believed you were untouchable. Down on the ballroom floor, the crushing reality of the situation finally crashes down on Ashley. She has been desperately trying to blend into the shadows near the back of the VIP section, but the mention of the FBI and federal crimes shatters her composure completely. Her eyes widen in pure, unadulterated terror. She realizes she is holding the bag. She realizes she is wearing jewelry bought with stolen money, and she holds the title to a car purchased with embezzled corporate funds. She is no longer just a mistress. She is an accessory to federal wire fraud. Ashley shoves her way through the angry crowd, ignoring the glares and insults thrown her way by the furious shareholders. She marches directly to the front of the stage, her face twisted in a mask of pure, self-preserving panic. Ashley screams, her voice cracking with hysterical terror. You told me that money was from your trust fund. You swore to me it was clean. Bradley looks down at her, his eyes wild and desperate. Ashley, shut up. Do not say another word in front of these people. No, I am not going to federal prison for you, she shrieks, tears of absolute panic streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. She digs into her designer purse with trembling hands and pulls out a heavy set of keys attached to a leather Aston Martin fob. She rears back and hurls them directly at Bradley's face with all her might. The keys strike him hard in the chest, clattering loudly to the wooden stage floor. You lied to me, Ashley wails, backing away from the stage as if Bradley is radioactive. She turns to the federal agent standing quietly in the shadows of the wings. I did not know. I swear to God I had no idea he was stealing from the company. He manipulated me. He told me he was a billionaire. I am a victim here. She turns on her heel and sprints toward the back of the ballroom, her expensive heels sinking deeply into the plush carpet. She shoves past the furious shareholders, desperately trying to reach the heavy oak doors to escape the fallout before the handcuffs come out. She grabs the brass handles and yanks downward, but the doors remain firmly sealed. The Croft financial security detail stands like a wall of solid stone, completely ignoring her frantic, hysterical sobbing as she beats her fists against the thick wood. There is no escape. The trap is perfectly sealed. The noise in the ballroom reaches a fever pitch. The shareholders are surging forward, pressing aggressively against the edge of the stage. The federal agents step out of the shadows, forming a protective barrier between the crowd and the Belmonts, their hands resting cautiously near their utility belts. The atmosphere is highly explosive. It is a corporate riot in the making. Gregory Belmont realizes this is the absolute end. His legacy, his fortune, his entire bloodline's reputation is turning to dust on live television. But Gregory is a creature of pure, stubborn survival. He refuses to go down without throwing one last desperate punch. He truly believes he still has an ace up his sleeve. He believes he can still control the narrative and calm the mob. Gregory violently shoves Bradley aside, grabbing the microphone from the acrylic podium. His face is purple slick with heavy sweat, his eyes bulging with manic desperation. "Listen to me," Gregory bellows into the microphone, his voice booming over the enraged crowd, fighting to regain his patriarchal authority. "Listen to me right now. This is all a coordinated smear campaign. This is corporate sabotage, orchestrated by a bitter, vindictive ex-wife. Yes, we had some temporary liquidity issues. Yes, we made some aggressive financial maneuvers. But the Belmont Group is not bankrupt." The crowd continues to shout, completely rejecting his desperate lies. But Gregory screams louder, completely unhinged and fighting for his life. "We are saved. Do you hear me? We are saved," Gregory roars, pointing a shaking finger at the ceiling as if calling upon a higher power. "Just yesterday afternoon, we secured a massive $200 million bridge loan from Apex Capital. The funds are guaranteed. The capital is completely secured. We have the cash reserves to cover every single project, every single dividend, and every single debt. This company is solvent, and we will survive this." For a fraction of a second, a ripple of hesitation washes through the crowd of shareholders. The sheer conviction in Gregory's voice, the promise of $200 million in hard, verifiable cash, is enough to make a few of the investors pause. Hope is a dangerous, blinding thing, and Gregory is weaponizing it perfectly. Bradley nods frantically beside his father, latching onto the lie with desperate enthusiasm. "He is right. We signed the papers. The money is ours. She cannot touch us. I do not say a word. I do not need to. I simply take a graceful step back and gesture toward the center of the stage. My father, Jonathan Croft, walks slowly up the stairs. He moves with the calm, predatory grace of a lion circling a wounded gazelle. He does not rush. He does not raise his voice. He steps up to the podium, standing right beside me. He looks at Gregory Belmont, who is still clutching the microphone stand, gasping for breath. My father reaches out and gently, but with an iron grip, takes the microphone from Gregory's trembling hand. He looks out at the sea of shareholders, acknowledging the crowd, then turns his cold, piercing gaze directly onto Gregory's terrified face. The entire ballroom falls into an absolute, breathless silence. Everyone knows exactly who Jonathan Croft is, and everyone knows that when he speaks, the financial world stops to listen. My father adjusts his tailored suit jacket, his expression completely devoid of mercy or hesitation. "About that loan, Gregory. Apex Capital Solutions is not an independent entity." My father states, his voice, a rich, resonant baritone that commands absolute submission from every single person in the room. "It is a wholly owned subsidiary of Croft Financial. It serves as our aggressive acquisitions arm designed specifically to deal with distressed, toxic assets. Assets exactly like the Belmont Group." Gregory stares at him, his mouth opening and closing like a suffocating fish. He looks down at his hands, then back up at my father, his mind violently rejecting the information. "But we dealt with Elias Vance." Gregory stammers, his voice a pathetic, high-pitched squeak. "Elias Vance is the vice president. He authorized the transfer." He shook my hand. "Elias Vance works for me," my father replies smoothly. He has worked for me for 15 years. He executes my orders, and yesterday his orders were to hand you the rope you so desperately needed to hang yourself. You came into my building begging for a lifeline to save this fraudulent house of cards. You asked for $200 million of my money. I approved the bridge loan personally. I authorized the transfer. A collective gasp ripples through the massive crowd of shareholders. The wealthy investors standing on the ballroom floor suddenly realize they are witnessing a legendary corporate slaughter. They stop shouting. They stop waving their phones. They stand in perfect, captivated silence, watching the undisputed king of finance dismantle a petty regional fraudster piece by piece. But I do not lend my capital to criminals. My father continues, his tone dropping to a dangerous, icy pitch. I do not finance men who steal from their own investors to buy luxury cars for their mistresses. I do not partner with executives who falsify quarterly earnings and hide massive, crippling debt from their own board of directors. Croft Financial adheres to the highest standard of corporate ethics. You, Gregory, have fundamentally violated every single metric of that standard. My father steps slightly to the side, gesturing toward the massive LED screens that are still brightly displaying the undeniable proof of Bradley's embezzlement. The offshore routing numbers the fake vendor invoices, the staggering sums of stolen cash. Therefore, my father announces, his voice echoing like thunder across the grand ballroom. As the sole issuer and underwriter of your $200 million bridge loan, I am formally invoking the Morality and Corporate Ethics Clause. Due to the blatant criminal embezzlement revealed today, you are in catastrophic breach of contract. I am calling in the debt. I am calling it in immediately. Gregory stumbles backward, colliding hard with the acrylic podium. You cannot do that, he wheezes, clutching his chest as a spasm of sharp pain rips through him. We have a 30-day grace period. It is standard industry practice. We have 30 days to cure any default. I step forward, taking my place back at the microphone. I look down at Gregory, feeling a cold, dark satisfaction radiating through my entire body. There is no grace period, Gregory. If I say, my voice cutting through the heavy silence of the room like a perfectly sharpened blade. I look over at Bradley, who is still cowering near the broken power switch, his face pale and slick with terror. Did you really think we would hand you $200 million without reading the room, Bradley? I ask, projecting my voice so every shareholder hears the absolute foolishness of their former executives. Did you honestly believe you could march into an elite acquisitions firm and dictate the terms of your own survival? You were so blinded by your own arrogance, so desperate to secure the cash advance to buy your mistress a diamond bracelet, that you completely failed to read the fine print in Section 6 of your contract. Bradley shakes his head weakly, his eyes darting frantically around the room. We read it, he whispers. It was standard. It was a highly customized financial guillotine, I correct him sharply. Section 6 clearly states that in the event of a default triggered by criminal financial misconduct, Croft Financial waives all standard cure periods. It grants us the immediate unilateral right to seize all pledged collateral instantly. We do not need a court order. We do not need a judge to sign an injunction. We own it the exact second you breach the terms. I pause, letting the crushing reality of the contract settle heavily over the Belmont men. I look down at Patricia, who is sitting rigidly in the front row of the VIP section, her hands gripping the armrests of her velvet chair. As of 3 minutes ago, I state coldly, looking directly into Patricia's terrified eyes, the Belmont Group is officially bankrupt. Your corporate accounts are drained. Your commercial real estate portfolio is currently being absorbed by my father's asset management division. But that is just the corporate side. Let us talk about your personal assets, Patricia. Patricia lets out a strangled whimpering sound, shaking her head in denial. No, she gasps. You cannot touch my personal money. You pledged it, Patricia, I remind her, my voice hard and unforgiving. Your husband and your son signed it away because they were terrified of facing these angry shareholders empty-handed. They bet your entire life on a lie. So let me be exceptionally clear about your new reality. The sprawling suburban mansion you locked me out of. It is mine. The fleet of luxury vehicles sitting in the garage. They belong to me. The vacation home in the Hamptons. Mine. Patricia presses her hands over her ears, tears streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. And those three private generational trust funds, I continue my voice rising to deliver the final fatal blow. The accounts you used to mock my independence, the money you flaunted to make everyone around you feel small and insignificant. Croft Financial seized them at 6 o'clock this morning. They are gone. You have absolutely nothing left. You do not have a house. You do not have a car. You do not have a single dollar to your name. You are entirely penniless and completely homeless. Patricia Belmont finally breaks. The perfectly crafted illusion of high society superiority shatters into a million jagged pieces. She slides out of the velvet chair and collapses onto the carpeted floor. She lets out a loud, agonizing wail that rips through the quiet ballroom. It is the raw, primal sound of a woman realizing her entire identity has just been violently erased. She beats her fists against the floor, sobbing uncontrollably, mourning the loss of her wealth, because she has absolutely nothing else inside her soul. On the stage, Gregory's physical deterioration accelerates. He clutches his chest with both hands, his face turning a dangerous mottled shade of purple. He sways heavily, his breath coming in short, painful gasps. He looks out at the crowd of shareholders, the people who used to hang on his every word, who used to treat him like a financial visionary. Now they are looking at him with pure, unadulterated disgust. They are watching him die a public, humiliating corporate death. Gregory's knees buckle. He collapses against the side of the acrylic podium, sliding down until he hits the stage floor. He lies there, clutching his heart, staring up at the ceiling, as the reality of his complete public and financial ruin permanently sets in. He built his empire on deception and greed, and now the foundation has completely dissolved. Bradley does not move to help his father. He does not rush down the stairs to comfort his wailing mother. He simply stands frozen near the edge of the stage, trapped in a paralyzing state of absolute terror. He is finally realizing that his actions have severe, inescapable consequences. He is finally understanding that he is not a king. He is just a foolish, arrogant man who picked a fight with a predator he could not comprehend. The shareholders begin to murmur again. The shock is wearing off, replaced by a cold, calculating anger. They want blood. They want the men who stole their money to pay the ultimate price. They begin shouting for security, demanding that the Belmonts be held accountable. I raise my hand, signaling for quiet. The crowd instantly hushes, deferring to the woman who holds the keys to their stolen assets. You do not need to worry about holding them accountable, I say, my voice projecting a calm, absolute certainty. I assure you the consequences for their actions have already been arranged. I do not just destroy empires. I make sure the criminals who build them never see the light of day again. Right on cue, a loud, heavy commotion echoes from the back of the ballroom. The massive double oak doors swing open with violent, undeniable force. The bright, flashing red and blue lights of emergency vehicles bounce off the glass walls of the venue, casting frantic shadows across the ceiling. A squad of heavily armed police officers marches into the grand ballroom. They are moving with swift, tactical precision. Their heavy boots stomp against the carpeted floor, cutting a direct path through the parting crowd of shareholders. They are accompanied by two senior detectives in sharp suits, their badges pinned clearly to their belts. I look at Bradley, offering him one final merciless smile. I tipped them off 48 hours ago, I say quietly, knowing my voice will carry over the microphone just enough for him to hear. I sent them every single wire transfer, every fake invoice, and every encrypted email. The lead detective steps up to the front of the stage. He looks at Bradley, then looks down at Gregory, who is still clutching his chest on the floor. He pulls a pair of heavy stainless steel handcuffs from his belt. The metallic click echoes sharply through the massive room. Bradley Belmont, the detective, announces, his voice booming with absolute legal authority. You are under arrest for federal wire fraud, grand larceny, and corporate embezzlement. The trap is officially shut. The beast has completely devoured them. The heavy stainless steel handcuffs glint under the brilliant glow of the ballroom's crystal chandeliers. Bradley Belmont is completely paralyzed. His mind, conditioned by a lifetime of extreme privilege and insulated wealth, simply cannot process the image of a federal agent treating him like a common criminal. The officers do not wait for his permission. Two heavily armored tactical agents step forward, flanking Bradley with military precision. They grip his arms, their thick tactical gloves pressing deeply into the expensive fabric of his bespoke suit. The physical contact breaks the spell. Bradley shatters. He lets out a sound that defies description. It is a high, reedy gasp of pure, unfiltered panic. The facade of the untouchable corporate conqueror disintegrates instantly. He twists violently, using a sudden burst of adrenaline to rip his left arm out of the agent's grip. He does not run toward the exits. He knows there is nowhere to run. The venue is completely locked down by my security team. Instead, he drops directly to the floor. His knees hit the polished hardwood stage with a loud, hollow thud. Bradley scrambles forward on his hands and knees. It is a pathetic crawling scramble across the stage, closing the short distance between us. Before my personal security detail can intercept him, he lunges forward and grabs the hem of my white couture trousers with both hands. He clutches the fabric so tightly his knuckles turn stark white. His face is turned upward, aimed at me, completely stripped of its usual sneer. He is sweating profusely, his expensive cologne mixing with the sharp, sour scent of genuine terror. "Vanessa, please," Bradley begs, his voice breaking into a wet, ugly sob. "Please, you have to stop this. You have to tell them it is a huge misunderstanding. You know me. We took vows. We promised to love each other through thick and thin. I still love you. I never stopped loving you. You are my wife. You are the only woman I ever truly respected." The shareholders on the ballroom floor fall into a dead, captivated silence. Hundreds of high-net-worth investors are holding their phones up, recording every single second of this spectacular humiliation. They are watching a man who stole their millions beg for his life at the feet of the woman he tried to destroy. Bradley's tears are real now. They spill over his cheeks, dropping onto his ruined silk tie. He realizes that pleading to my non-existent affections is not working. He senses the absolute void in my posture. He immediately shifts his strategy to self-preservation, fully willing to burn his own bloodline to save his skin. He releases one hand from my trousers and points frantically at Gregory, who is still gasping for air on the floor just a few feet away. "It was him," Bradley screams, his voice cracking with hysteria. "It was my father. He forced me to sign the wire transfers. He set up the offshore shell companies in Cyprus and the Caymans. I did not want to do it. I told him it was wrong, but he threatened to cut me out of the family trust. He manipulated me, Vanessa. I am a victim here, just like you. I was just following orders. Please, you have to believe me." I look down at him. I do not shout. I do not scowl. I do not offer him a smug, victorious grin. The absolute worst punishment I can inflict upon a narcissist like Bradley Belmont is total, unwavering indifference. I look at him as if he is nothing more than a stain on the stage floor. The coldness in my eyes is absolute. It is a terrifying, bottomless void that finally makes him stop talking. He stares up at me, his mouth hanging open, waiting for a shred of mercy that simply does not exist. I slowly and deliberately reach into my designer clutch. My movements are precise and unhurried. The entire ballroom holds its collective breath, watching my hands. I bypass the solid gold Croft Financial corporate cards. I bypass the encrypted mobile phone. My fingers locate exactly what I am looking for. I slowly pull my hand out of the clutch. I am holding a single crumpled $20 bill. It is worn and faded. I hold it out over the empty space between us. I open my fingers. The crumpled paper currency flutters downward, twisting softly in the air, before landing directly on the wooden floorboards, mere inches from his sweating knees. "You are busy," I say, my voice perfectly smooth and carrying just enough volume to be picked up by the stage microphones. "Try Uber." The words hit him like a physical strike. I watch the exact moment his spirit breaks completely. It is the perfect symmetrical callback to the moment of my deepest grief, the moment he and his family chose to mock my pain when I needed a lifeline. He stares at the crumpled $20 bill on the floor, his mouth trembling. He has absolutely no response. His brain cannot compute the magnitude of his defeat. I take a deliberate step backward, pulling the hem of my trousers free from his limp, defeated grip. That movement is the signal for the authorities to resume their work. The two federal tactical agents step forward with brutal efficiency. They grab Bradley by the shoulders and haul him up from the floor. He does not resist. All the fight has completely drained out of him. His arms hang limply at his sides like a rag doll. "You have the right to remain silent," the lead detective states loudly, his voice echoing off the glass walls of the ballroom as he forcefully spins Bradley around. He grabs Bradley's wrists, pinning them securely behind his back. The heavy metal cuffs snap shut with a sharp, unforgiving ratcheting sound. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Seeing his son dragged upward in chains triggers a sudden violent surge of panic in Gregory Belmont. The patriarch realizes that Bradley just confessed to the entire scheme on a live microphone, implicating him directly in front of hundreds of angry shareholders and federal agents. Gregory pushes himself up off the floor, his face slick with sweat, his chest heaving wildly. "Wait!" Gregory shouts, his voice a hoarse, desperate croak. He stumbles forward, raising his hands toward the lead detective. "Do not listen to a single word he says. The boy is a pathological liar. He is a rogue executive. He orchestrated the entire embezzlement scheme completely behind my back. I am the CEO, but I was kept entirely in the dark. I demand immunity for my full cooperation. I will testify against him." The lead detective turns his cold gaze away from Bradley and focuses entirely on Gregory. He does not look impressed by the display of parental betrayal. In fact, he looks profoundly disgusted. "Nice try," Gregory the detective says, taking a heavy step toward the older man. "But as the chief executive officer, you signed the quarterly financial disclosures. Under federal law, you are completely liable for the accuracy of those ledgers. We have your signature on 23 separate fraudulent filings. You are equally responsible for every single stolen dollar." The detective signals to two more officers waiting in the wings. They step forward, moving in on Gregory with the exact same ruthless precision. Gregory tries to take a step back, shaking his head in absolute denial, but the officer seize his arms. He lets out a pathetic whimper as his hands are forced behind his back. The second pair of handcuffs clicks shut. The Belmont men stand side by side on the stage, completely ruined. They are wearing bespoke suits, but they look small, weak, and entirely broken. The massive LED screens behind them continue to display the overwhelming evidence of their federal crimes. The crowd of shareholders begins to cheer. It is a loud, vengeful applause, a standing ovation for the destruction of the men who tried to steal their futures. "Move," the tactical agents command, shoving Bradley and Gregory toward the center aisle of the ballroom. The police march them down the steps and right through the center of the crowd. The shareholders do not hold back. They shout insults demanding their money, jeering at the fallen executives. Every single smartphone in the room is recording the perp walk. The blinding flash of cameras lights up the ballroom like a chaotic strobe light, capturing the complete and utter devastation of the Belmont legacy. They are forced to walk the gauntlet, their heads bowed, their faces contorted in ultimate shame. I stand at the podium beside my father, watching them disappear through the heavy oak doors at the back of the venue. The flashing red and blue lights of the police cruisers waiting outside cast long, frantic shadows against the marble foyer. The doors swing shut behind them, sealing their fate. The Belmont Empire is gone forever, replaced by the absolute untouchable power of Croft Financial. The heavy oak doors of the grand ballroom seal shut, cutting off the frantic flashes of the press cameras and the muffled shouts of the disgraced Belmont men. The silence that settles over the room is profound and absolute. The remaining shareholders do not riot. They simply pack up their briefcases and file out of the venue, completely aware that the era of the Belmont Group has been violently and permanently extinguished. I step down from the stage, my father's hand resting lightly and protectively on my shoulder. We walk out into the crisp Manhattan air, leaving the ashes of their empire behind us. 3 months pass with the rapid, ruthless efficiency of federal justice. The glowing flat-screen television mounted on the pristine white wall of my new office murmurs with the mid-morning financial report. I sit behind a massive slab of polished obsidian that serves as my desk, signing off on a humanitarian aid grant for a developing agricultural sector in Southeast Asia. I pause, lifting my pen, and turn my attention to the high-definition broadcast. The news anchor looks impeccably serious. The scrolling text at the bottom of the screen details the historic fraud case. The anchor details the catastrophic, lightning-fast collapse of the once prominent real estate family. Gregory Belmont, the former CEO, pled guilty to 23 counts of federal wire fraud, gross misappropriation of investor funds, and criminal conspiracy. The judge showed absolutely no leniency, citing the arrogant and systemic nature of the theft. Gregory has been sentenced to 15 years in a federal penitentiary. The broadcast displays a courtroom sketch of him. He looks hollowed out, a deflated husk of the booming patriarch who used to dictate the lives of everyone in his orbit. His legacy is officially reduced to a cautionary tale taught in first-year business ethics classes. Bradley Belmont fared even worse. The anchor's voice remains clinically detached as she outlines his fate. Bradley, the architect of the offshore shell companies and the primary beneficiary of the embezzled capital, attempted to cut a plea deal by offering to testify against his own father. The federal prosecutors laughed at the offer. They already possessed the impenetrable mountain of digital evidence I had handed them on a silver platter. Bradley was hit with the maximum penalty guidelines. He received 20 years in federal prison without the possibility of early parole. The news segment flashes a brief, humiliating video clip of Bradley being escorted into a transport van outside the federal courthouse. He is wearing a bright orange jumpsuit, his wrists shackled to a waist chain, his head bowed to hide his face from the relentless glare of the paparazzi. He traded his custom Italian suits and his stolen luxury cars for a concrete cell and a metal toilet. The man who froze my bank accounts to break me is now entirely owned by the state. I reach out and press the mute button on the silver remote. The absolute quiet of my corner office rushes back in. It is the sound of total, unblemished victory. Across the city, in a crumbling brick building on the absolute fringes of the outer boroughs, Patricia Belmont is experiencing a completely different kind of imprisonment. She sits on a stained, sagging floral sofa that she salvaged from a thrift store down the street. The apartment is impossibly small, a stifling one-bedroom box that smells permanently of boiled cabbage and damp drywall. The ceiling is water-stained, and the rhythmic, aggressive rattling of the elevated subway tracks shakes the thin glass of her single window every 10 minutes. It is a sensory nightmare for a woman who spent 40 years draped in cashmere and demanding flawless service from terrified domestic staff. Patricia stares blankly at the chipped linoleum floor. Her manicured nails are jagged and broken. Her hair, once perfectly maintained by weekly elite salon visits, is dull and showing harsh streaks of gray at the roots. She clutches a cheap prepaid mobile phone in her trembling hands. It is the only piece of technology she could afford after Apex Capital seized her personal accounts, liquidated her hidden trusts, and sent private security contractors to physically lock her out of the sprawling suburban mansion. She had to watch from the curb as repo men boxed up her designer shoes and diamond jewelry. She opens her contact list. It is full of names that belong to the elite upper echelon of Manhattan high society. Socialites, charity board members, wives of hedge fund managers, women she used to host for extravagant afternoon teas. She taps the name of her former closest confidant, Margaret. The call goes straight to a generic voicemail. Patricia does not leave a message. She knows Margaret blocked her number weeks ago. She tries another name, Eleanor, then Susan, then Beatrice. The result is exactly the same. Endless ringing silence followed by the cold dismissal of an automated voice. The high society circle she worshipped is a ruthless, unforgiving ecosystem. They do not tolerate failure, and they absolutely despise poverty. The moment the Belmont name became synonymous with federal fraud, Patricia was instantly and permanently exiled. She was stripped of her country club memberships and uninvited from every gala. She is a social pariah, a ghost haunting the absolute bottom rung of the economic ladder. Patricia drops the cheap phone onto the sagging sofa cushion. She looks around the cramped, depressing room. There are no crystal chandeliers. There are no domestic servants to bring her chilled champagne. There is only the relentless, suffocating reality of her new life. She is entirely penniless, utterly alone, and completely forgotten. She spent her entire existence valuing money over human decency, and now the universe has stripped her bare, leaving her with absolutely nothing. I turn away from the muted television screen and look down at the thick, leather-bound portfolio resting on my obsidian desk. The Belmont Group is a closed chapter, a minor footnote in the grand sweeping narrative of my life. 3 months ago, I walked out of that ballroom and stepped fully into my birthright. The crisis management agency I built from the ground up, the firm Bradley tried so desperately to crush under his heel, did not just survive, it evolved. It has been seamlessly and perfectly integrated into the massive corporate infrastructure of Croft Financial. But it is no longer just a boutique crisis management firm. It is now the Croft Philanthropic Ventures division. I am the executive vice president. I do not answer to a board of terrified, compromised men. I do not operate in the shadows of a toxic marriage. I wield a multi-billion-dollar endowment with absolute autonomous authority. My division specializes in stabilizing distressed communities, funding aggressive urban renewal projects, and providing massive zero-interest capital loans to female entrepreneurs who are fighting to build their own empires from scratch. I took the cutthroat predatory tactics I learned in the corporate trenches and weaponized them for the greater good. My firm is highly respected, globally feared, and radically effective. I am independently wealthy, completely untethered from the financial abuse and emotional manipulation that defined my past. The industry magazines that used to write glowing puff pieces about Bradley's fake genius now feature my face on their covers, detailing my aggressive philanthropic strategies and the flawless integration of my division into the Croft legacy. I am no longer Vanessa Belmont, the struggling, subservient event planner. I am Vanessa Croft. I am a titan in my own right. I stand up from my desk and walk across the plush imported carpet. My office is a masterpiece of modern minimalist design encased in floor-to-ceiling glass walls that offer an unobstructed panoramic view of the Manhattan skyline. The city stretches out below me, a glittering ocean of steel glass and raw ambition. The afternoon sun reflects off the surrounding skyscrapers, casting long golden rays across my face. The heavy frosted glass door of my office opens with a soft pneumatic hiss. I turn to see my father, Jonathan Croft, stepping into the room. He is wearing his signature tailored suit, his silver hair perfectly styled. He does not look like the terrifying corporate executioner who dismantled the Belmont Empire in front of hundreds of people. He looks relaxed, entirely at peace, and deeply proud. He walks across the room and stops beside me, looking out over the sprawling city. He extends his hand. He is holding 2 steaming cups of artisanal coffee, sourced from a small local roaster that my division recently funded and saved from bankruptcy. I take the warm cup from his hand. "Thank you," I say quietly, letting the rich, complex aroma fill my senses. He takes a sip of his coffee and leans slightly against the reinforced glass window. "You executed that international merger flawlessly this morning, Vanessa," he says, his voice a warm, encouraging rumble. "The board of directors was thoroughly impressed. You have completely transformed the philanthropic division in a matter of months. You built something that actually matters." I look at him. There is no hidden agenda in his eyes. There are no conditional strings attached to his praise. There is no toxic leverage, no manipulation, and no desperate need for total control. It is simply pure, unadulterated familial support. It is the exact kind of love and respect I spent years searching for in the dark, suffocating halls of the Belmont estate, only to realize I possessed it right here all along. "I learned from the best," I reply, a genuine, warm smile touching my lips. But I also learned exactly what not to do. I learned how to build a legacy that actually survives the light of day. My father smiles back, a quiet, powerful expression of absolute approval. He reaches out and gently squeezes my shoulder. You are exactly where you belong, Vanessa. You are home. He turns and walks back out of the office, the heavy glass door closing softly behind him, leaving me alone with the breathtaking view of the city. I take a slow, deep breath of the crisp, air-conditioned air. I look down at the bustling streets, at the thousands of people moving through the concrete canyons below. I am no longer a victim. I am no longer a pawn in a rigged game played by arrogant men who think money grants them invincibility. I have completely reclaimed my name. I have reclaimed my absolute power. I have reclaimed my family and my future. I take a sip of the hot, bitter coffee. I look out over the glittering empire of Manhattan, the city that tried to break me and ultimately crowned me. A slow, confident, and entirely unshakable smile spreads across my face.